Hi guys. So this is Module 2, and this will be the first presentation. I'm going to be introducing to you the Occupational Therapy Practice Framework, Domain and Practice, which is the third edition. We will affectionately call this the OTPF throughout the rest of this time that we're together. I guess you want to call it a semester. This is really the basis and philosophy of what we do as a profession in occupational therapy. So this is one of those textbooks that if by any chance you have rented it, I would encourage you to purchase it as you will be using this throughout your time at Q College. We refer to this quite a bit. They will be updating this textbook within the next year or two. It's actually under revision right now, but we will still be using this for the immediate future. So I would encourage you to purchase it, and it's not that expensive. So to start with, as you see, the OT Practice Framework 3, the OTPF 3 is the third edition in this series. They have actually, there's been many changes that have happened between the first, second, and third edition. I'm not going to go too much into that now, but I really want to talk about why it is so important to have these textbooks as part of our professional construct. It's intended for both internal and external audiences. So this means that it's good for people in the OT profession to understand what is in our scope of practice and all of the concepts that we look at and that makes a person what we call holistic. And it's also important for external audiences, such as our patients, to understand what occupational therapy is about, what other professions, we'll say physical therapy or speech therapy, or even physicians, to understand what it is that OT can be a part of and what we exactly look at and what our role is with patients, as well as thirdly is payer sources. So when insurance companies or even private pay, or if you have a contract with an agency, those individuals or those companies that pay us want to understand what it is that we are about. So this is also a document that would be important for them. So essentially it summarizes the constructs, again, that define and guide our practice. It articulates what OT's contributions are in really promoting the health and participation of people, organizations, and populations through the use of engagement and occupation. We introduced this a little bit in Module 1. We're going to talk much more about what this means in Module 2. It summarizes our core beliefs and also promotes a positive relationship between occupation and health and how people view it as their occupational beings. When we talk about what an occupational being is, this is that our mindset or our thought process, our processes are that all people need to be able to engage or are entitled to engage in occupations of their choice or need. They're also, this also promotes them to grow in what they do, experience independence or interdependence. They also have equality, participation, and security that helps their health and well-being. It also defines a profession's unique focus on occupation. So when we talk about the area of expertise of occupational therapy practitioners, remember, are both occupational therapists that are registered as well as certified occupational therapists. We have this knowledge base on what a person's human performance is and the effects of the disease or disability and how that impacts their human performance. So if you're engaging, say you're a truck driver, we'll just give an example. As a truck driver, the person has to be able to sit inside of a vehicle for long periods of time. They have to be able to have the constructs and understanding of how to operate the machinery, be aware and react to situations that might come to them that they're not expecting when they're driving. Maybe a deer crosses the road. And they also have to have the physical strength, coordination, and a function in order to operate the vehicle. Now, if this truck driver develops Parkinson's disease, we'll say, for an example, you don't have to understand what that is, but it's a disease process that is progressive and it affects your central nervous system. I'm sorry, your peripheral nervous system, and it results in you having less control of your body. How is that effect of the disease and disability going to impact that person's occupation of driving a truck, or even being a parent, or being a spouse? How is it going to impact their human performance? We also talk about the knowledge of engagement and occupation and the performance of everyday life activities. In the first scenario, I talked about an actual job, which is one component of an occupation. But how does a person, now that is being affected with Parkinson's disease, how does that affect their ability to go out with their friends, to maybe go golfing or go out to dinner or work with, just enjoy time with their family, their spouse or their children? So it looks at how the effects of the disease or disability can impact everybody throughout their lifespan. We also are experts in the application of knowledge and skills in order to change that client's performance. So we'll change now the disease or disability. So say somebody has a hip replacement, and following a total hip replacement because of arthritis, a person's not able to engage in certain tasks such as dressing without the use of assistive devices. We're going to talk more about that in a couple minutes. But anyway, we're going to teach them how they're able to dress themselves, and we're going to show them the tools that they can use in order to get their level of independence back. We also look at the direct performance changes that are needed in order to engage in a meaningful occupation, looking at life satisfaction, being able to do something that they feel good about and that they're being productive. So we talked a little bit about the means and the ends. This profession of occupational therapy really views occupation as both a means and an end. Okay, we talked about the differences a few minutes ago, but when we talk about the mean, this is the use of occupation as a method of changing a person's performance. We use various arts, crafts, games, sports, exercise routine, daily activities, modifying activities in order for a person to engage in what it is that they want to do. It's systematically selected and tailored to each person. What this means is that our intervention approaches that we use with individuals are not consistent necessarily amongst the larger population. They're individualized for what the person's needs are. When we look at the end of the occupational therapy intervention, ultimately we want to be able to make sure that that client is engaging in a meaningful occupation, depending on what it is they need to do to get there, but that's our ultimate goal. That's the end product. So when we talk about the domain of concern, it's our profession is concerned with the human experience in which practitioners of the profession offer assistance to others. Again, it's very holistic. It's personal. We work with individuals to get them to achieve and participate in whatever it is that they want to do. It frames the arena in which occupational therapy evaluation and intervention occurs. We're going to talk about that more in a couple of minutes, at least touch base on that. We'll be talking more about that in Module 3 and 4. And then OTs are really concerned in the person's ability to engage in everyday occupations. So there are 5 domains. There's occupations, there's client factors, there's performance skills, performance patterns, and context and environment. When you look here, this is actually taken out of the OTPF 3, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. But it breaks down each of these domains into subdomains. So in the areas of occupation, you'll see that we have activities of daily living, which we call ADLs, instrumental activities of daily living, which we call IADLs, rest and sleep, education, work, play, leisure, participation, leisure and social participation. When we look at client factors, we look at values, beliefs, and spirituality, body functions and body structures, When we look at performance skills, we look at motor skills, process skills, and social interaction skills. When we look at performance patterns, we look at habits, routines, rituals, and roles. And when we look at context and environment, we're looking at cultural context, personal context, physical context, social context, temporal context, and virtual context. So even though on this previous slide, we just talked about the 5 domains, you can see that it's much more in depth with that. I'm going to show you this. I have the occupational or the OT practice framework is up on my computer, and I want to take a minute or so to review this. Okay, so when you go through here, it talks about the different, as you can see, there's different pages. Everything is listed under an S page, and when you scroll through here, here is the table that I just showed you. Well, if you keep going through, you're going to read these. This is part of your reading assignments this week. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you're going to get to the point where we get into the tables. This is what I want you to look at. So as you see here, table 1, it breaks down all of the activities of daily living, instrumental activities of daily living. It looks at education, and it breaks that down even further, as well as work, leisure, play, and social participation. Then when you get into the next sections, it looks at client factors. I'm going to wait on that just because we're not going to be talking about that in this specific presentation. But as you can see here, this breaks it down much more. I wanted to make sure that you have time to look at each one of these more specifically so that you have a better understanding of what this is. But we're going to talk about it a little bit more today. Okay. When we get into the service delivery system, this is the evaluation, intervention, and targeting outcomes. Again, we'll be talking about more about this in modules 3 and 4. The last part of the OT practice framework is the International Classification of Function. This is brought about to be consistent with the WHO framework. The WHO framework is set up as the World Health Organization. And that is an organization that is set forth to measuring health and disability of individuals and population levels. This then goes for, there's a much larger reason for this, but it looks at what a person needs, whether it be medication, whether it be rehabilitation, whether it means that they need assistance in their home, how much monies can be set aside to combat different disabilities that are being affected in different target areas. So the World Health Organization takes on a larger picture. But when we talk about international classification of function, it goes along that World Health Organization framework. When we talk about the international classification of function, it looks at body functions and structures, activities and participation, and environmental factors. Now, if you just think about when we were talking about those 5 domains, it's basically the same thing. We're looking at how a person is able to engage in an activity and participation, or participate in the activity, which looks at those areas of occupation. It looks at context and environment to see what it is that needs to change, which is part of the environmental factors. And then it looks at body functions and body structures, which we are going to be talking about in this module a little bit later on. So what is the ICF? If you look here on our International Classification of Function, it talks about what happens when you're looking at disability and health. You can browse online to find different disabilities, and this is how things are described. So say, let's see, we're going to look at, I'm going to extend this out a little bit. We're going to talk about the function of, we'll say, neuromuscular and movement-related functions. Okay, I'm going to extend this out even more, and I'm going to say I'm having muscle difficulties. Okay, and then specifically the area of motor function. Okay, we're going to have power muscles of one limb. So I'm going to open this up. Okay, so this code, which is B7301, which is a power of muscles and limbs. So this specifically looks at functions related to the force generated by the contraction of a muscle groups of one arm or one leg. Inclusions for this would be monoparesis or monoplegia. I'm not going to get so much into the inclusions right now, or even into the descriptions. But if we're working with an individual that has had a stroke and they are having difficulties with one side of their body, this code here will allow us to get reimbursed for services that we provide in order to address this area. That's why this is very important. This is why the OT practice framework helps support what it is, what our role is when we work with individuals. I wanted to share that a little bit with you. You can certainly take some time and look through this just by linking on this site. Okay. The last thing that I want to talk about are some, before we get into occupations, are the key definitions. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It's not merely the absence of a disease or infirmary. This is a key description that is found in the OT practice framework. I haven't made any of these up. When we look at well-being, it's a general term that encompasses the total universe of human life domains, including the physical, mental, and social aspects. When we look at participation, it's the involvement in any life situation. And when we, the term engagement is the act of sharing in activities. These are 4 definitions that you will need to know for your exam. So be sure that you read this information in your readings and ask me if you have any questions, if you would like more information about how these definitions are different from one another. Okay, now we're going to go into areas of occupations. Okay, occupations are brought about, it's a class action that we engage in that is shaped by our personal interests, desires, or values. There might be somebody that you know that absolutely loves to play the violin. That is their occupation. This is something that they enjoy doing. This is their desire, and they value doing that. Somebody else may not like that. Same thing with cooking. Somebody might prefer baking over cooking. So this is very unique amongst individuals, but it can be grouped into a general population. An occupation always reflects the unique characteristics of an individual. It has personal meaning and can only be interpreted by the person experiencing it. Again, somebody who is playing the violin may be able to share that they are experiencing this occupation of playing this instrument by the way that they feel. But you may not have the same feeling because it's interpreted only by that person experiencing it. Okay, occupations more specifically. We're going to talk about activities of daily living. These are activities that one does in taking care of his or her own body. This usually is included in the areas of eating, bathing, dressing, transferring, meaning that you're transferring yourself from one place to another, or you're transferring an object from one place to another. Toileting, this is the actual act of going to the bathroom, and then walking or moving around. Okay, so think about what occupations activities of daily living skills that you do throughout the day. You're eating breakfast, you're taking a shower, you're putting your clothes away, you're getting yourself dressed. These are all things that you do to take care of your own body. That's what constitute activities of daily living. Instrumental activities of daily living are activities that support daily life, but they're more complex than other interactions that are needed for ADLs. Now, again, if you look back at the OT practice framework, sorry, wrong thing. Let's go back to the other section. Where did I put it? Okay. We're going to keep going. Okay. So when you go back to